checking in. Saw a video this morning from PBS, the space-time video people, that I used a lot back in the day to gain information from. They were really great, the way it's presented. And then this morning, he's talking about quantizing the gravity again. And almost the first thing he says is that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is a fundamental property of the universe. Man, if this is the level of stupidity that we really have to deal with, if people as clever as the people who make the PBS space programs are going to start a presentation with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle as a fundamental property of the universe, then I'm afraid it's really game over for us as a species. Because think about these paradoxes that keep appearing. How many more paradoxes do you want? And I'm just going to go back to Euler. I think if Euler had had matrix calculus to his hand and some decent optical equipment, it'd have solved this before 1800. It's so simple about the motion of water. Think about the paradox of Euler's axis theorem. He's saying that if you've got a sphere and you move it at all, just the slightest motion, it does result in one rotation around the fixed point at the centre. And you go, well, how is that possible? How can I just move that a tiny bit and that goes the whole way around? Well, it can only be because it becomes more fluid towards the centre. It's fluid mechanics. It's the only solution. It can't be solid, can it? Can't be. Even if it's solid right to the centre and then the centre is fluid, that would work. And so perhaps that's the easiest one to look at. Take a cannonball and apply Euler's axis theorem to it, knowing that we're going to get a vector axis coming out of it. Ask yourself how. Take to the centre and go, well, okay, let's say the centre is a sphere of water, and there's a boundary between the steel of the cannonball and the water that's in the centre. And so as I try and turn the cannonball now from the outside, look, there's delay motion there on that water. There'd be a hysteresis effect. It wouldn't react straight away. There'd be a momentum. And then if you stopped, the water would then run past the point which you turned it. If you kept doing that tick, 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 eventually you get the water to spin in a direction, wouldn't you? Does that make sense as a real experiment that you could do? So what would happen is that you've set the XYZ vectors just by the direction of forces that you've put. If you're twisting it this way on its equator, you've set all the axes in one go. But the z-axis could be anywhere on that equator, the point of it. The axle could lie anywhere, on the z-axis could lie anywhere. And what will set it will be the motion of the water in the centre now. So the z-axis becomes independent. And it has its independent in terms of its rotational position, but of course the axle must lie on the equator, but it could be anywhere on that equator running across. The y-axis must go straight up, but it can't go straight up. That's the y-axis. So we end up with an independent system inside of two axes, a z and a y-axis. But the y-axis, we're going to call that what Euler calls it the vector axis, the Victor axis, if you like. I thought the Victor Leve. So the vector axis is created. So an additional axis is created from all of these forces. And then that axis sets the z-axis. So that in the interim axis theorem, this vector axis we've created is unstable around the z-axis. Yeah, it will do that. If you think that the water has got a standing wave in the centre and it's created a wave from the motion, there's a yin-yang shape of a wave inside there, it could easily reverse pressure, where you've got negative pressure on the top, positive pressure on the bottom, vacuum and pressure, just difference between them. It could easily just flick over. And that's the magnetic pole switch. So come back out now and see why they're lying to you about this stuff, because they think they're doing us a favour by hiding the magnetic pole switch which is coming from us. They're not. They're just going to destroy us. Eventually they'll have to own up. And how many dead bodies do we want at that point? So every time I start with a physics explanation, I end up with piles of dead bodies every time, because it's the decisions that science is making that are causing the dead bodies. And when I see the PBS people making the same mistake, adding to the problem, it breaks my heart, because they are smart and lovely people. And so it's clearly something's wrong. It's inflicted stupidity. These are clever people. Why would you say something as moronically unproven as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is a fundamental property of the universe? Because it negates everything else. If you're negating Euler and Newton, surely you'd say, hold on, should we think again?